Appreciate it. I'm verbose, so I've been given the topic of alliums, which I'm more interested in garlic, but as I discovered about onions, they're similar in attributes. So I'm going to try and be brief and touch on the highlights for us gardeners as to how to grow onions and garlic and what the life cycle. I think it's repetitive, or some of the earlier presenters have given a lot of good background to establish what I'm going to talk about here. So here's a variety. I've been growing garlic in my home for about 3 years, 3 seasons now. Haven't bought a head of garlic at the store since. It makes a huge difference in the quality of food you get. In terms of homesteaders being self-sustaining, am I need to stay, don't walk? Stay on this side, okay. Sorry. Nervous energy, so I do what I do. Let's see. So allium species. It's a huge family, as I discovered. It's been rebranded or reorganized over the decades. So currently, I believe they are members of the Amarylli family. There's well over 900 species of onions or alliums, of which cepa, as you can see in my slide here, cepa is the very most common that you'll find. That's going to be your basic grocery store globe type onion. They come in various, they're going to be round. It's going to be a storage onion is going to be your yellow onion, what you get at the grocery store. And then there are also the sweet onions, like a Walla Walla or Spanish or Bermuda onions. Those are generally referred to as European type onions. In my slide, you can see it here. This is a variety called Rosa di Milano. And so that's one type. The other type you're more familiar with is going to be the fistulosum or scallion evergreen bunching onion. And that is the part we eat, the green part of that onion rather than the bulb. So the common chive is the one with the pretty purple flowers. And that, again, we eat the grass, as it were, the tips, and you'll chop those up onto your omelets or onto your baked potato. And then there's garlic chives are a little bit different. In the interest of time, I'm going to go on through some of these. European leek is just going to be bigger. The interesting thing that I didn't know about was, so this is an example of a leek, but it's also a scallion. So any onion can be a green onion. It's just immature, okay? So we'll talk about planting spacing, and that's where you can take advantage of that. But technically, these are European leeks, but they are in the scallion form. Next, you also have what's called elephant garlic, which is really technically a leek and not a garlic. It's just a really huge leek. And then when we get to garlic, there are 2 varieties that you're probably generally aware of, soft neck and hard neck. And with DNA testing done in the 90s, seems to have been a sort of renaissance for garlic, or the real discovery and growing of the garlic. And what am I going to say? Oh, so there's hard neck and there's soft neck. Other interesting things to note, they are biennials. And I believe it was Gay or somebody earlier was talking about the first season, you're basically producing the green. So that's the scallion. And then as the season progresses and it's got enough energy and leaves, it's going to take those carbohydrates, send them down to the bulb, and then the bulb will swell at the appropriate time. Let's see here. In terms of growing onions, there are what are called long day and short day onions and intermediate. And that's basically, as you can see here, there's a dividing line. I think it's the 47th parallel or something to that effect. 35th parallel, sorry, 35th latitude that separates the southern growing from the northern growing. Uh-oh, what did I do here? Sorry. No, I think I got it. So basically, what am I trying to say here? The bulbs are going to, they're daylight dependent, so that there needs a certain amount of sunlight hours, 10 to 12 hours for those in the south and 12 to 16 for those in the north. And so you can tell that that means that they're going to bulb differently depending on the geographic location they're at. So if you were trying to grow southern onions here in the north, you're really going to get a small bulb. In the south, they don't have the cold process, the vernalization that some onion types, globing especially, would need. So that's the main difference. And most seeds, and that's what I brought some of these for, will give you an idea as to not only the day or what type they are. I mistakenly, when I went through some of mine, found that I actually had a southern type of onion. That explained to me why it was so pitifully tiny. I think I brought it. It's this little guy here. So they're going to be more heat loving. And I think we talked about that as well in Gay's speech. So I'm not going to go too much into that, but just know that a way to start onions is either from seed, like I was talking about, or from sets. And sets are basically just these little round onions, bulbs, if you will, that were pre-grown the season before. And then they hold them over, they dig them up in the fall, the growers, or you yourself can, but you can easily just overwinter them by starting them in August. Give yourselves about 8 weeks or so, mid-October. They'll start to show up above the ground, and then you can just let them overwinter, cover them with mulch, and you can overwinter. And then this time of the year, you'll start to see the heads poke up out of the soil. A reason to do by seed is because you're going to get a better variety. If you sets, they're going to have them locally, so you're not going to have to worry about the southern versus the northern. And sometimes they also look like little shriveled up bundle of scallions, and those are just waiting to be pre-planted. So they've taken that. It can take 8 to 10 weeks for onion seeds to grow. So here's a visual of seeds that I started on the 29th of January. So not too many, like 4 weeks ago. And you can see they're just little blades of grass. And I've just used an old egg carton, and I've gone ahead and mass plant. And you can tell they're ready to be transplanted, up potted. So that's the disadvantage of growing seeds. Yes, you get more variety, but there's a lot more that you have to do to maintain them. So at this point, I would chop them down to about 3 inches, and I would up pot them into a separate pot and then give them another 4 weeks. As the weather warms up, I'm situated for end of March to be able to put them in the ground, which is perfect timing. Know that they are shallow rooted, so any bed, you're going to want to make sure that it is already well amended with compost or good quality soil. And you're going to want to keep your bed weed free. You're going to mulch for consistent moisture. And then in terms of pests and diseases, the most often are going to be the onion maggot or a thrip. What else can I tell you? In terms of popular varieties, know that Walla Walla is a sweet type of onion, so that's going to be more the intermediate. And your Rosa de Milano, like I showed earlier, is a storage onion, and that's going to take 110 days from seed, but that's from transplant of the seed. So we were talking earlier, Gay, how many days we have? Like 2.8 months for something to grow. So you can tell if you're wanting to get onions in, I would say March, you're probably already seeing them at the store. In fact, I went somewhere locally, and you find just bags of these little preset bulbs, and that'll give you the head start where you don't have to worry about the seeds of the 8 to 10 weeks. You can just go ahead and plant and give them that. So if you planted them now, probably about May-ish, by the time the plant sale comes, you would actually have this stage where you could then go ahead, put them in the ground, and then May and June, they'll have that heat, because we'll go from mid-50s to mid-60s, and that's partly what's going to trigger them to grow from the green onion to the bulbing portion. If you plant too tightly, generally we recommend about 4-inch spacing. You can plant closer depending on if you want to have scallions or green onions in between. What else? In terms of harvesting, curing, and storing them, like I talked about earlier, the day length is going to trigger that bulb formation, and really know that the number of your leaves is going to determine the size of your bulb. So that's why you need that 8 to 10 weeks of the seed growing for it to get the multiple leaves. At this point, there are about 3 leaves, but the more leaves you have, the larger the bulb is going to be, and then that's more nutrients for when the bulb starts to form below. Temperature, you want to be careful, and we don't usually get that much above 85 degrees, so I haven't had issues, but it can bolt, or if you overfeed them. They are going to be a moderate to heavy feeder as well, so early on, because they are green, you would feed them nitrogen. Once the bulb forms, I wouldn't necessarily work, so you would want to feed them when you plant in the bed, and then in the spring, when they start to peek their heads up, you would go ahead and give a little side dressing, again, of just compost or a basic 10-10-10 fertilizer, a well-balanced one. Scallions, you're going to go ahead and, like I said, you can either weed those out earlier, or you can go ahead and, those will only take about 60 days, I believe, from seed, and as opposed to like 125 for that Walla Walla. With scallions, you can, whenever they're pencil thin or whenever you need them, you can take them up. The other thing is to know that your globe onions, you can see here on my picture, I probably didn't wait long enough. So this is a white Spanish, yellow storage, and I think there's two types of red. One, that little piddly one is the one I was probably showing here. That is a southern type. And then this is, I think, a burgundy as well. So it's hard to tell, but you can see that on this one, the neck is starting to weaken. There's a point where it's going to collapse. Some encourage you to push them over to make that happen. Others say don't do that because that could be a vector for disease and whatnot. But just know that once your neck starts to collapse, it's a rapid process of deterioration for the top leaves, which they'll dry out. You want to give them so you'll stop watering them maybe about 3 weeks or so after you've seen that happen, and it'll take about a week for them to dry. You can pull them up. They're shallow rooted. You'll pull them up, and you can store them outside if we're having a dry spell, and let them dry completely in the sun. And then you would go ahead and trim the roots, leave a top inch, and store them for your winter use. Let's see here. Going on in terms of garlic. Let me go forward one slide more because I think I did this backwards in my way. Of leeks we talked about briefly, and I'm just going to show them here. Leeks are actually, elephant garlic is a member of the leeks, which is a different species, but can you see any similarities without knowing what's what in this picture? So here is my elephant garlic that I planted last year. This is called a round, so it's an unformed bulb. Like I told you about, they're biennials. So the first year, you may not get that clove separation. So that's a perfect sized bulb because all that energy is stored in that bulb. So then this year, when it came up, I got what looks like a scape, but it's going to be the flower, and that's the indication that the bulb separation is happening. They're separating into each individual clove. Here's an example of a standard garlic, and here's elephant garlic. So you can see how it gets its name, and then this is actually a leek. So if I look at the leaves, they look kind of leek-like, right? Anyway, that's just an interesting tidbit. True garlics, soft-neck garlic, are of this Allium sativum species. Going quickly through here, there's two types, hardneck and softneck. Silver skin is going to be the most popular type of garlic. It's going to be a long storing garlic, and it is the softneck group. That's what you're going to see in the grocery store. They're usually papery, white papery. So in this one, this is the silver skin, is going to be the silver rose, and on this side is going to be the artichoke variety. Oh, go back. That fingering me. I'm fat fingering. I'm fat fingering is what I'm doing. There we go. It's on Zoom. Okay. Thank you. So silver skin is the most common, what you see in the grocery store. And then the artichoke is going to have, it's not like an artichoke. It's named artichoke because you can see here there's many layers around. So there's usually about 3 or 4 layers. Whereas on the silver skin, they're usually, this is just a small example, but they're usually going to be one of the larger ones on both the soft necks. They were grown in Gilroy, California is the most popular place. About 90% of our garlic is grown there, or in China. And the reason that they are grown is because they're good long storage keepers. They are very sharp. If you've had garlic, who hasn't? When you cut into garlic, there's basically a process of the sulfur components within a component called allicin, A-L-L-I-C-I-N, is what's causing that sharp flavor. The more you chop it, the more you're going to have that. So if you want to have milder garlic in your food preparation, you can either roast it whole, and that's going to bring out the sugars, or you can go ahead and cut them up as appropriate for the. Other thing to know is with the soft garlic, you can actually get what is called green garlic. And that's just immature bulbs that you would go ahead and harvest just like you do with your scallions. In orange, because that's my favorite color, I've gone ahead and listed some varieties that I've grown over the past and that I would highly recommend for our area. In the interest of time, let's go on to hardneck garlic. This is the one that's most interesting and most appropriate for our area. You're going to find a lot of diversity in this. So I should say the softneck garlics, again, they're going to be a lot more warm-loving. They're going to be longer. So that's probably more appropriate for the southern states, but you can grow them here as well. The interesting thing is Washington State has a great climate, and we have a great place called Fillory Farms up in is it Onalaska? Okanagan Valley, in the northeast part of the state. They're about 50 miles from Canada, and they've got both the challenges of the heat and of the wet. So they're a perfect breeding ground, and they are a great resource. Fillory Farms, it's in my resource page at the very end. That's a great place to get, and they also have the author, like I was saying back in the 90s, there was a sort of resurgence of understanding of garlic. And so Ron Engeland was at Fillory Farms. He's got a great book. This was before a lot of the analysis was done in terms of the updating of the DNA, but he's the one who started to form them into these 10 various groups that exist that I'm going to talk about with hardneck garlic. And at that same time that he was writing, there was a gentleman called Chester Aaron, who wrote a book called Garlic is Life. And it talks about him creating one of the very first garlic festivals in like 1996 for Chez Panisse, which I think is Alice Waters' restaurant. So one of the early generators of enthusiasm for these hardneck garlics. With hardneck, as you can see here, the main difference is that they're going to produce what's called a flower or a scape. So just like we talked with onions, you're going to plant them in the fall and overwinter them. And then about this time of the year, I'm already noticing I'm seeing little green leaves poke up. So I'm going to want to side dress them in the coming weeks. And then as I get the greenery, I'm looking to get about 10 to 12 leaves before the bulb forms, probably around May, June timeframe. In June, late May, early June, as that heat and day length changes, you're going to get a little flower come up, only on the hardneck. And you can see the difference. That's why I gave you this is an artichoke type, so you can see there's no core. Hardneck, they're generally going to be less strong, but they're also going to be fewer cloves. They're going to have more versatility in terms of what flavors and the colors of the wrappers. So just going quickly through the various 1, 2, 3, there's about 10 total varieties. We already talked about the 2 soft neck. So in hardneck varieties, they come in flavors groups called rocambole. And that is so these are all hardnecks, and they are going to give a form of scape, some stronger than others. Rocambole is one of the first recognized ones. Spanish Roja, you may have heard of and bought. It's a very easy to peel garlic. That's why chefs love hardnecks. Purple, they're going to store a little less longer than the soft neck, though, is the thing to know. Purple stripe comes in 2 sub-varieties as well, called marble purple stripe and glaze. And again, some names that you can look for if you're interested. I've grown all of these, so I can give tips if you're interested. Porcelain is a mainstay, and they're going to be white, and they're going to have a tight wrapper, and they're going to be pretty large. They do very, very well for our area. These down here, the Creole, Turban, and Asiatics, are weak bolting, they say. And in fact, I believe they've recently identified the Creole as a sub of the silver skin variety, the soft neck. So these are going to be more southern state use, but I like challenges, so I'm going to go ahead and try them. If anything, we don't get, they're going to store long, so that's a good thing. They're one of the earliest ones no, sorry, they don't store long. They store 4 to 6 months. They're going to be the first ones to sprout, and they're going to store the least amount. And let's see what else. In terms of planting the garlic, you would plant in the fall. I usually go from Halloween to Thanksgiving in our area. And you can see I just go ahead and use what's called a dibbler. Just poke a hole like into the ground. In here, you can see I'm using a galvanized trough. And I can fit about 36 to 40, spacing them on 4 to 6 inch centers, depending on the variety and how large you want them. I'm the one who likes variety, so I do 4 to 5 of 50 varieties. And each clove will produce a head. So you want to separate the head of garlic into the cloves just before you plant them. And you can leave the paper on them, and it's going to go pointy side up, because that's where the leaves are going to come from. So pointy side up, that's the bottom. Basal plate is at the bottom here. So it's really, each layer of leaf is a layer of the outer coating. So you want to have, like I said earlier, about 10 to 12 green leaves. And then the scape will come up in late May, and then come June or so, you would harvest those scapes. They're a great treat. Here's the scapes. You can see it's kind of hard to see in here. They kind of look like the little necks, swan necks beaks that will turn over. And ideally, you're going to want to wait for them to coil around and form like a P, a capital P. You can harvest them. They're like asparagus. They're a mild garlic flavor. You can create a pesto out of them. Here's the green garlic I was showing earlier as well. So if you didn't harvest the scape, you would get a smaller bulb potentially, but you also get what are called bulbils, B-U-L-B-I-L-S. And those are another form of top setting onion. We do that, and I didn't have time to talk about the walking onion, but that was an interesting discovery as well, is there's something called an Egyptian walking onion, which is a top setter variety of onion, and it will have a flower that will bend over as it gets wilted and will self-sow that way. Drying and storing of garlic, basically once the scape has come out, you want to monitor and cut back your watering, really. You're going to give it, and the way to see that the garlic is becoming ripe, or as it were, is you cut back at the water after the scape has been generated, and the leaves will start to die from the bottom up. And I think I had an earlier picture that showed that. Yeah, right there. So you can see the bottom leaves here are starting to, if I had 10 to 12 leaves, I would wait until about half of them, about 5 or 6 of them turn brown. And then that's going to be an indication that I can dig around. And you can see the heads are forming. And it really, if you get a shelf, a sides of the shelf on the garlic, that means they formed. If it doesn't have that shelf, i.e. the neck of it, that means the bulbs are still kind of small. So you're going to want to harvest when it's dry. And what else? Drying and storing. So you can see here, I've gone ahead and picked them, and you just want to shake off the soil. You never want to wet them. At this point, you're trying to dehydrate them. And so what you can do is tie them in bundles of like 10 and hang them in your dry storage area. This is my woodshed, that open air. If you don't have that, just on open shelves with a fan blowing in your basement would be sufficient, or you could even braid them. And that said and done, I just brought some visuals. Here's a quick to see that an onion wants to live. Anyone have this happen in your house? It's basically the bulb is trying to live. It's trying to send up a flower. There is no flower. I've got some great resources here. UW extensions on growing onions, growing garlic, and troubleshooting. Fillory Farm link, Hood River Garlic in Oregon is a great place. And Uprising Seeds is a great place to get seeds for yourself. Thank you very much.